I'm going to spend the next 100 days on one chunk, but there is a twist. I'm able to expand my chunk by crafting special items or looting deep underground. My goals for this video are to uncover a boring old village, revamp it into an awesome Minecraft base, and try and get myself a full set of diamond gear. Let's get right into it. So here I am on day one with just one chunk in the entire world. But luckily for me, I'm not alone. I somehow spawned with 3 villager friends, one of whom happened to be the village idiot. Kind of ironic, as that's usually meant to be my job. But these villagers had a welcoming gift for me. Oh, look at that, potatoes, yo! But to farm them, there's going to be a few steps that I need to take first, like punching a tree, grabbing my first stone. Why are these guys following me in here? And of course, crafting some tools. Now, thanks to a tree chopping mod, getting wood was going to be nice and easy. Oh, wait. I've destroyed half this entire house. Not to worry though, my plan was to expand this village and transform it into an awesome base. Though we are quite a ways off starting that project yet. Not wanting to become saplingless in this world, I spent some time punching the remaining leaves so that I could replant my spruce trees. I found another food source in the form of some sweet berries. Not the best food, but I figured it's probably worth farming, at least until I get my potato farm up and running. And seeing as I've destroyed half this poor villager's house, I thought I may as well just take the rest of it down and tidy up our chunk a bit. I sorted my inventory and wanted to get to work on expanding our chunks as soon as possible. I smelted some logs to get some charcoal so that I could craft some torches, as we were going to need to get to the very bottom of our chunk to find our first loot chest. These chests spawn at the bottom of every chunk I spawn in and contain vital items for crafting chunk spawners. I spent the rest of day one making my way down, finding some copper along the way, another vital item that we're going to need. When it got dark, I made my way back to the surface to sleep, as I didn't want to lose my new villager friends. They were going to prove to be very useful later on in this video. On day 2, I crafted up a bunch of stone picks and carried on digging down. On my way, I found some more copper and also came across what looked like the start of a lush cave. Other than that though, there wasn't really too much to look at, just a bunch of stone and deep slate. But after long last, I made it to Y-60, the level that the loot chest should spawn on. I dug around for a while until I found the chest, which contained 4 world crystals. These things will make more sense tomorrow. I made my way back up to the surface and took a well-earned rest. On the morning of day 3, I put all my copper in the furnace, as we're going to be needing some copper blocks later on today. But once I'd harvested some berries and chopped some trees, it was time to start making use of our newly found world crystals. We can use these to make something called a world core, and we can use a world core to make a whole ton of different things, mainly chunk spawners, but there is something more important that we need to craft with it first, and that is a world forge. It's getting complicated, I know, but it's going to make sense real soon. That, or maybe I'm just dumb. Now with this world forge, we need to place it down and feed it raw materials. This thing will turn those raw materials into more world crystals. So by feeding this thing all of our junk, we're going to be able to expand our chunks without having to explore at Y level -60. Not only that, later on in this video, it's going to allow us to choose which biomes we would like to spawn. At this point, I didn't have enough raw materials to get enough world crystals, so I ended up digging around the iron level in the hopes of getting enough iron so I could craft a bucket. That way I'll be able to start a farm for our potatoes. The sooner I don't need to eat these berries, the better. I eventually found 6 raw iron, dug around a bit more, and then made my way back up to the surface to keep feeding our world forge. Still 1 crystal short, I went back down to the mines and dug around at coal level. That way I'd no longer need to use my logs to smelt things in the furnace. After a short while, I had the cobble and coal that I needed and fed the forge one last time. And there we go, finally, I could make another world core, craft some copper blocks, and put together our first chunk spawner. Now there are quite a few different chunk spawners that we can craft, the main ones being a regular chunk spawner, as well as something called an unstable chunk spawner. The regular chunk spawner will continue with the current biome, whereas the unstable one will spawn a completely random chunk. Seeing as we have a nice village spawn, I wanted to use the regular chunk spawner in the hopes of getting some more villagers, or maybe even a village farm for some more crop types. Okay, here we go. Whoa. Oh, well, that's not really what I was expecting. This new chunk didn't spawn any of the things that I was hoping for, but it did spawn a wandering trader. I lit up our new chunk, relieved it of its trees, and finally got a potato farm up and running. Well, I guess I don't need to craft a bucket now. I also managed to tame one of the wandering trader's llamas. The more friends I have on this world, the better. But yeah, that's the end of day 3, and things are going pretty well so far. On day 4, it was my mission to go and find the loot chest that spawned in our brand new chunk. On my way down, I found some iron hovering over the void, grabbed my first glowberries, and mined my first lapis. Eventually, I made my way down to loot level and located the chest. This time though, it contained a world core. On my way back to the surface, I grabbed some more copper and also some more coal, and then got my copper smelting so we can turn it into some more blocks. I dumped my junk blocks into the world forge, chopped my first giant spruce tree, until it was time to sleep. Though apparently I can't sleep because there's monsters nearby. I found a zombie at the entrance of our mine, dispatched that thing, and just decided to hang around for the copper to smelt. On the morning of day 5, I woke up surrounded by villagers, feeling a little bit pressured to craft my next chunk spawner. Yeah, I think these guys want a little bit more space to live in. The new chunk spawned in the other half of the house that I destroyed, as well as some more trees and some more ice. I spent some time tidying up the place, and also sorting out my inventory. Yeah, I should probably make a storage room sometime soon. I spent pretty much all of the rest of day 5 down in the mines looking for some more copper. Copper is going to be such an important item for us in this video, and I wanted to make sure that I kept up to date mining out new chunks. I ended up with just over a stack, so I doubled my smelting efficiency by crafting a second furnace. I got the copper smelting and decided to chop trees while I waited. We're going to end up needing a lot of wood for plans that I have a little later on, so it was important that I kept up with wood farming while I could. On day 6, I wanted to put some of that wood to use by turning it into sticks. That way I could trade them for emeralds with one of our villager friends. To do that, I needed to craft myself a fletching table, give a villager a purpose in life, and trap him in a prison for all eternity. I crafted a ton of sticks and got trading, all the while thinking how great it would be to finally trade with a wandering trader that's been invading our home for days. But as soon as I had some emeralds, that wandering trader disappeared. Bro, you gotta be kidding me. I drowned my sorrows down in the mines once again, where my day was made even worse by this zombie, and also this skeleton. As it turns out, I must have let some water run down our entire staircase to the bottom of our world, taking out all my torches on its way. I made some more friends on my descent, and finally made it to loot level. Once again though, I did manage to find another loot chest, which to my surprise contained an actual chunk spawner. So I made my way back home straight away to expand our base a little bit more. Not before doing a little bit of stick trading though, because I was going to need a lot of emeralds if I ever hope to get some decent tools and armor. I eventually decided on a place to spawn the new chunk, and this thing seemed to contain the start of some new villager houses. I ended the day by dumping some more bits into the world forge and crafting another world crystal. Now we're only one more crystal away from getting a new chunk. On day 7, I wanted to get to work on something that's going to have a big impact on our world, and that is a villager breeder. I plan on using villagers to get some decent gear. That way, making an awesome base is going to become a lot easier. So once again, I took a trip down to the mines to find myself 3 vital items I was going to need: iron, redstone, and gold. This ended up taking up most of the day, but when I got back to the surface, I traded for some more sticks, fed the world forge, smelted my new ores, and expanded my potato farm. Eventually, I had the crystals to craft another chunk spawner, and I decided to try and expand in the direction that we did last time. We did manage to get some extra villager houses, one of which had some pumpkin seeds. Day 8 started off with me back down in the mines, looking for some more gold. I needed at least 6 gold so that I could make some powered rails for the villager breeder. Thankfully for me though, it didn't take long to find, so I went home and chucked that gold in the furnace. I spent the rest of day 8 crafting the items that I needed for the villager breeder, and waiting for potatoes to grow. I was going to need quite a few of those to get this villager farm to work. But finally, on day 9, it was time to build up the villager breeder. I followed a tutorial by Voltrox, which I'll leave a link to in the description. But yeah, now that this thing's pretty much made, it's time to move on to the next day, where I quickly realized I did not have the villagers that I needed to get this breeder to work. Our nitwit villager was unable to take the farmer job, and this other guy just flat out refuses to work. I'm not too sure why. So I was left with no choice but to head back down to loot level, where I found myself a world core and also a chunk spawner. So I head back up to craft an extra chunk spawner and spawned in 2 fresh new chunks, where hopefully we will be able to get a new villager to spawn. Thankfully, this guy came through the door and also came through for me to take a job as a farmer. Now, double thankfully, the first lazy guy decided he would like a job now, and our breeder was almost up and running. All that was needed is the potatoes to grow up, so we could load both farmers with enough food to make a baby. At least that's how I think it works. I spent the rest of day 10 doing a few chores around the quickly expanding base. Oh, I hate creepers. On day 11, I wanted to keep collecting more wood while I was waiting for villagers to breed. For some reason, the tree chopping mod decided it no longer wanted to work on the giant spruce trees, so I ended up chopping those manually. After that though, I thought it'd be a good idea to tidy up the new chunks and get rid of all the smaller spruce trees. I did find a wandering trader who was selling sugarcane, so I thought it'd be wise to buy some, as I had no idea whether I was going to get some to spawn naturally in new chunks. But as the sun was setting, I managed to complete the day's task of tidying up the base. It was was at this point I came across another wandering trader who was selling beetroot seeds. I quickly grabbed some more emeralds, excited to buy some, when... Are you kidding me? Okay. On day 12, the tree chopping mod decided it was going to work again, which was great, as today was the day that I was going to start putting all that wood I collected to good use. Not before checking on the villager breeder that unfortunately still wasn't working. I think these guys still needed a bit more food, so I gave them a helping hand. I spent the rest of day 12 constructing a bridge over the void, using spruce slabs so that mobs wouldn't spawn on them. I added some fences on the sides for a bit of safety, and finally made a big platform at the end, because tomorrow I was going to be constructing a mob farm. Now this thing would prove to be super useful over this 100 days. But as night fell, I saw that because we were far away enough from home, I had managed to force my first passive mob spawns. We finally had some animals on our base, including a wolf, some chickens, and the remains of a sheep. That thing would have been very useful if it was still alive. Ah yes, day 13, the day of building the game-changing mob farm. Well, it would have been if I had enough iron. So once again, it was another day in the mines for me, though this time it was a little bit more eventful. I found a slime in the lush cave, which I did manage to defeat. It was so nice knowing that one of the very few chunks we have in this world just so happens to be a slime one. I also found a little bit of iron and also some gold when I came across this guy. I wasn't really sure if this man's pearls were worth it, but I thought to myself, what's the worst that can happen? Well, yeah, I suppose that's actually pretty bad, to be fair. But after collecting my belongings, I decided to dig around a little more for some iron. I was looking for at least another 2 so that I could craft myself 4 hoppers for the mob farm. To cut a long story short, though, I wasn't very successful in my iron mission, only finding coal and copper. To be fair, though, I did see the skeleton battle. I guess that's pretty cool. But after a little more digging, I made my way back up to the surface to put the little iron that I had into the furnace. When... Oh, baby villager! That's right, the villager breeder was finally working. I still had quite a few more to collect for my future plans, but I was so relieved that this thing was finally functional. Side note, at this point, I kind of thought that I built this farm wrong. But anyway, to top off day 13, I crafted 3 hoppers for the mob farm, thinking that I can just add the 4th one when I have some more iron later. Okay, day 14, and now it's actually time to build the mob spawner. I went with the classic mob spawner design that you've probably seen a million times, but if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? I went with a double layer for this farm though, hoping to improve the spawn rates, and it seemed like a no-brainer considering I had the resources. Even though this thing took a couple of days to throw up, and it's extremely ugly, I think it's worth the investment. With the farm build complete, it was so nice to see that it was actually working. Because the farm was double layered and built over the void, the farm was definitely working well enough, with a nice constant flow of mobs dropping down. Now, taking a step back, this entire thing is an absolute eyesore. With no real way to decorate it though, I had a bit of a cunning plan. Grab some blocks, hit her all the way up, give it some eyes, give it a mouth, dig my way back down, slap some mobs a little bit, and would you look at that, we have a brand new friend. I'd like to introduce you all to Jerry. Jerry's my best friend now.
Oh, hello.
I spent the next morning harvesting my potatoes and also my wheat. I finally had enough potatoes that I could start using them as food, so I chucked some in the furnace to cook. I expanded my sugarcane and took a quick visit to Jerry to pick up the bones I collected so far. This is when I made the discovery that cows had decided to spawn on the base, so I made them a quick and ugly home and chucked them right in. I'm sure they'll be safe under the watchful eye of Jerry. I then crafted a bunch of axes so that I could replenish my stock of wood, which was made a whole lot easier now that we had some bone meal. After a while though, I did manage to collect quite a bit of wood. I then spent the rest of day 17 underground collecting some cobblestone, as it was very almost time to start working on the first real building of the base. Just before bed though, I traded some sticks with a Fletcher, increasing my emerald wealth. Now the first build I want to work on is actually going to be a villager trading building. These idiots were going to be the driving force behind completing my goals for this video, so I think I need to treat them right and give them somewhere nice to live. But before building, I wanted to make a start on leveling up some more villagers. I started with a toolsmith. Yep, this guy did not want a job. Oh, but would you look at that, this guy does. I leveled up the first villager by trading for a ton of stone shovels that I'll probably never use. When I came upon my first stumbling block, I was going to need a lot of iron if I was ever going to fully level up my villagers. And seeing as I have limited chunks in this world, that also meant I had a very limited amount of raw iron. I mean, it's not like I could take a trip out caving to grab iron to trade. So I thought, seeing as we have a villager breeder up and running, it wouldn't be too big of a task to build myself an iron farm somewhere over the void. Ironically though, to build the iron farm that I know how to build, I was going to need some iron. So I'm sure you've all guessed it, I went mining to try and find the iron that I needed. But after a while though, I went as far as I could, or more like like as far as I could be bothered to, and came back to the surface still needing another 2 iron. So on day 19, I thought I'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or I should probably say many mobs with 1 sword, and spent the day with Jerry, hoping to get the iron I needed from some zombies, plus a whole bunch of other useful loot too. On the morning of day 20, I had the iron that I needed to get the iron farm built up, but before I could begin construction, there was a couple of other bits that I was going to need to grab first. The main thing being a bucket of lava. Peering over the edge of the base, I did spot some at the bottom of the world, so taking a bit of a risk, I jumped off the edge and made my way down to where the lava was. I grabbed it and ascended back to the surface, thanks to some strategically placed water. The last thing I really had to collect for the iron farm was 3 more beds, which was a little bit of an issue as the sheep that were spawning on the base were getting yeeted by wild wolves. I thought it would be wise to grab some bones from Jerry and tame up the wolves. That way I would have time to shear fresh sheep that spawned. Unfortunately though, the sheep that I wanted were not spawning, so not wanting to waste any time, I figured sheep would have a better chance of spawning if they actually had more space to, well, spawn. So of course I made my way back down to loot level to grab some more trunk spawners. This time you got a stable trunk spawner and also my very first unstable trunk spawner. On the morning of day 21, I expanded the village area with my newly acquired stable trunk spawner, and not wanting to completely ruin the base with the unstable trunk spawner, I thought it'd be a good idea to make a bridge out past Jerry and try my luck over there. I mean, that place wasn't really looking great anyway. I crossed my fingers hoping to get some new wood or just anything at all of use or interest. Yeah, well, that's none of those things, is it? I showed my disappointment to the mobs and thought I'd try my luck by feeding the world forge, something that I've been neglecting and should probably use a lot more. Unknown to me at the time though, I was 2 copper short of creating another trunk spawner, so in the end I just grabbed the beds from the villager breeder to use in the iron farm. I figured I had enough villagers for now and I can just replace the beds later on once sheep finally decide to spawn. But with that, I finally had the things that I needed to build the iron farm, which to work properly had to be at least 64 blocks away from the base. I decided I'd build out past the villager breeder as I didn't really plan on expanding the trunks over this way anyway. But yeah, I won't go into too much detail about the iron farm. I've built this a few times on the channel before, and of course I'll leave a link to the tutorial in the video's description. But with that, I do have to say this thing was actually a pain to build. Usually this type of farm is dug into the ground, and obviously where I'm building it, there isn't really any ground at all. It was kind of confusing, so I had to build this thing in reverse from top to bottom, but after a painstaking day and a half, this thing was finally working. I mean, it doesn't exactly look great, and I didn't really have any materials to decorate it, but I kind of figured once I had all the villagers leveled up and a bit of spare iron, I could just tear this thing down anyway. On day 23, I wanted to begin work on the villager trading building, but to do that, I was going to need to collect some resources. So I crafted all the iron picks that I could and went down into the mines and just dug for a couple of days. I was going to end up needing a lot of blocks to transform this village, as well as a whole load more to feed into the world forge. Overall though, this was time well spent, as I also got a load of extra copper for crafting trunk spawners. Plus the whole time I was mining, the iron farm was running too. The next morning, I wanted to take a shot at getting my first new wood type in the base. So I ended up feeding a bunch of the stone that I just mined into the world forge so that I could craft a forest chunk spawner. This thing, as you can imagine, will spawn a new chunk, but it's guaranteed to be some kind of forest. Obviously, there's still a chance that this could just be more spruce, but at this point, I was just hoping for basically any other wood type, ideally oak wood. Yeah, of course it would be spruce, wouldn't it? Probably the first time I've been disappointed to see it. Maybe not the wisest decision, as this stone was mainly meant to be for building. I fed a ton more of it into the world forge, so that once again, I could take another shot at some new wood. And thankfully, this time, all this stone was worth it, because we got more spruce. Not wanting this day to be a complete failure at some sort of progress, I grabbed a little bit of iron that the farmer produced and leveled up the toolsmith to unlock its first diamond tool, an axe with unbreaking 3. Not bad at all. I did some more stick trading to try and keep up my emerald wealth, and decided I would tear down this villager house, as this is where I wanted the villager trading building to be. I decided to plot out some spots for the villagers to spend the rest of their days, and began to outline the edge of the building using cobble, andesite, and some mossy. But after moving some of the villagers around, as well as these cows that just happened to be in the way, it was time to start a new day. On day 26, I spent pretty much the entire day building up the rest of the villager trading building. Of course, right now, with resources limited, this was nothing special, just a place to keep all of my villagers organized. I finished the day by making a few more fletching tables for the trading area, so that once I moved more villagers in, I could up my emerald production. On day 27, 27, I moved in the last villagers remaining in the breeder and decided to make it my mission to get it up and running again. To do that, of course, I was going to need 3 more beds. Not having much luck getting sheep spawn before, I thought I was being smart by going down to where I was digging out a few days ago and turning that area into a dark room so I could get spiders to spawn. For those that don't know, you can turn 4 string into 1 wool. So for 3 beds, I was going to need a total of 36 string. Just to be extra safe, I crafted myself a full set of iron armor, thinking I was geared enough to get all the string I needed. Yeah, turns out this was such a dumb idea, as it was going to take a lot of mob fighting to get the 36 string. I kind of wasted quite a bit of time down here struggling with my sword, when I had the idea that there was someone at the base who would be able to help me. Jerry. I grabbed a bow and some arrows from my best friend, thinking it was going to solve all my problems. Spoiler, it didn't solve any problems at all. After all my hard work, I managed a grand total of 1 wool block. Yeah, I finished the day hoping that sheep had somehow spawned on the base, which of course they hadn't. So to make some kind of progress today, I unlocked an extra trade on the weaponsmith. Oh, I did not enjoy day 27. On day 28, I wanted to put the new villagers to good use and just forget about wool for a day. For pretty much the entire day though, I just chopped giant spruce trees, turned the wood into sticks, and traded them with my 3 Fletchers. After a while though, I maxed out the toolsmith trades, and ended up with an efficiency 2 pickaxe. But yeah, for the rest of the day, I just continued to trade for emeralds, when I realized there was actually a spare bed in one of the villager houses. Not too sure how I missed that. So that bed, plus my bed, I actually only needed 1 bed to get the villager breeder up and running, which meant I only needed 8 more string. Yeah, I think you can see where this one's going. So on day 29, I was back in the darkroom hellhole, fighting for my life and also string. I was actually holding my own and making my way through the waves of mobs that just kept spawning. That was until... Oh, I've been poisoned! Yep, I got poisoned by a witch. And like the big baby that I am, I just decided that 1 bed really can't be worth all this effort. Like, has anyone in the history of Minecraft really struggled this much to craft a bed? Because at this point, I wasn't really sure if this was ever going to happen. My best bet was to probably try and get a new villager house in a fresh chunk spawn. Or was it? Oh, sheep! Yes! Hoping that there were no more wild wolves around, I crafted some shears and finally got the wool that I needed to make a bed. I carried them 1 by 1 to live with the cows and chickens, and at last crafted the bed that I had long desired. After that though, I cleared out the old villager holding area outside the breeder, as I had plans to work on this area next. Also in that area was the stinky villager house that I've been living in up to this point, so I spent some time tearing it down to build something of my own. I was going to be building something that I really should have built near the start of this video, and that was a storage room. At this point, I had chests scattered all over the place, and honestly, I didn't really know what I had or where it was. 100 days isn't really that long to complete the goals that I've set myself, so if I stood any chance of achieving what I wanted, I was going to have to make sure that I stayed organized from this point on. I think 30 days of living like a slob is more than enough. I thought it'd be best to try and expand the base a little bit by spawning in a new chunk, so I semi-automated the world forge and went back underground to grind for some more resources to feed it. This was made a lot easier now that I had diamond tools. Eventually, I had what I needed to craft a chunk spawner and spawned in a pretty uneventful area. Honestly though, it didn't really matter as I just wanted more space to build. I ended day 30 by throwing up a quick floor plan for the storage building, just using some cobblestone. Though tomorrow, I was going to need to grind for just a few more resources and maybe take another shot at some new wood again. Oh, please work this time. And on day 31, that's exactly what I did. After taking care of some chores around the base, I head back down underground to mine up a whole bunch of deep slate, as I was going to be using that for all the roofs in the village. After that though, I thought I'd mine up a whole ton of tuff as well, as I thought this block would look good in some building, but I also planned to throw a big portion of that into the world forge, because I still really wanted a new wood type. I mined and mined until my diamond pick was almost broken, and well, that was about it for the day. On day 32, I fed the world forge so I could craft myself another one of those forest chunk spawners. Although we'd gotten spruce twice before, I thought I'd be smart and bridge away a little bit, just in case that had something to do with getting a new forest type biome. Turns out it's not that smart at all, as yet again I spawned another spruce biome. Determined to get new wood, I went back underground to loot level to pick up any remaining loot chests that was still at the bottom of the base, where I found an unstable chunk and also a well core which I turned into an extra unstable chunk. Surely this time I was going to get what I wanted, right? Yeah. No, I just got 2 oceans. I'm slowly creating a sea of spruce and sea over here. I ended the day by trading for a fresh diamond pick, ready to crack on with building a storage house tomorrow. But that's precisely what I did. I started up by building the base of the house out of tuff, cobblestone, and some andesite. And I also made a little weird mine entrance thing as well. After that, I gave the entire bottom floor an outline of spruce slabs, and then began to work on the second floor, which for now, of course, had to be made out of spruce. But on day 34, I still had a lot of work ahead of me to get the storage house finished. I mined some sand so that I could make myself some glass, and while that was being cooked, I finished off all the wooden parts of the second floor using stripped spruce logs, as well as some spruce stairs. I crafted my glass into panes, and filled in all the gaps I'd left for windows. And with that done, this thing was really starting to take shape. I had a couple of lower roofs that I needed to fill in with some deep slate slabs, so I quickly got that done, and then moved on to adding a little shape to the spruce trim that is separating the first and the second floor. I ended the day by doing a bit of terraforming out the back of the house, so that I can make a more permanent place for the animals to live. Hopefully we have time to give them a bit of a better home later on. On day 35, it was time to throw the roof up on this house. I didn't do anything too crazy with it though. I just made a roof trim out of spruce. I mean, who would have thought that? And filled in the gaps with the deep slate that I collected earlier. After that was done though, I spent a little bit of time adding a dormer onto the front side of the roof, just to help with a little bit of detail and interest. Once that was finished, I grabbed a few bits so I could make a simple chimney to add to the final roof detail. To finish the day off though, I tidied up each end of the roof, just on that bit where it meets the wall. For some reason, I always forget about these bits when I build a house. But after a few days break from trying to get new wood, I thought I devised a good idea, and that was to feed the World Forge moss blocks. A block that's super quick to harvest, now that I can make unlimited iron hose and have unlimited bone meal. I spent quite a bit of time at the Sea of Spruce just collecting as much moss as I could, all the while laughing at how smart I was. Oh, I'm so smart. As it turns out though, moss barely affects the World Forge at all. All that moss I collected just about made 1 crystal. I'd actually been outsmarted by a Minecraft block. Brilliant. In the end, I just decided to chuck in a whole load of stone I had laying around and crafted myself another unstable chunk, where this time... Yay, another ocean. Just get me to bed. After that failure of a day, I thought it best to make some progress and crack on with the house interior. I was really hoping to use some oak wood for this, so that it would look a little bit brighter inside. But of course, I was going to have to stick to using spruce for this one. Honestly though, thinking about it, it is kind of fun. Knowing that surely at some point, I'm going to get some new wood types, be it from a new chunk or maybe even a wandering trader. This base and the builds within it are going to end up reflecting my journey throughout this 100 days. Kind of stupid, but kind of cool. Anyway, after that thought that no one asked for, the interior is pretty much done. Not too much to talk about, just a load of spruce and chests. Wow, guys, day 38 was a wild one. Well, actually not really. I spent pretty much the entire day moving all the items I had laying around and just organizing them into the new storage room. I know, it's super exciting. Should we keep watching me do it? Yeah? Alright, yep, that's fine. Yeah, I'll just let you guys watch for a little bit. Yep, okay, no, I'm bored now. Anyway, after that, I chopped some trees so I can make some more stick trades. And I also tidied up the front of the house a little more, getting rid of the rest of the old villager holding cells. But while organizing my chests, I discovered that I had a world core laying around, so I crafted up 1 more unstable chunk. This is exactly why it's important I stay organized. But yep, as you can imagine, this stupid thing spawned another ocean, and I was sad. Not wanting to be defeated, I decided I would conquer the Sea of Spruce by digging down to its loot level and grabbing all of these lovely things. After laddering back up to the surface, I used the unstable spawner to spawn in another ocean. Yay! And then used my 2 regular chunk spawners to expand the main base area a little bit more, where I found 3 baby villagers, kinda weird, and this cute farm area. After that though, I used 2 world cores to craft myself 2 more unstable chunks. I mean, what could possibly go wrong this time, honestly? Which takes us to day 40. A monumental day in this video. Maybe the most important day in history. And no, it's not because I got this new ocean chunk. It's because of this. Oh, yes, oak! Oh, finally, I had oak. I rushed home to farm some up so I could use it to detail our storage house. Honestly, I've wanted oak for so long at this point, I kind of forgot what the heck I even wanted it for. Either way, it was so nice having it, and also having oak leaves. Like, who doesn't love decorating with these things? After that, though, I filled in the hole in the ceiling of the trading building. I'm sure that's been annoying a lot of you. That, or the fact that I've not stopped talking yet. Not too sure. But yeah, I spent the rest of day 40 moving villagers from the breeder over to the trading building. As next up, I really want wanted to get to work on getting some better gear. And first up on that list was some diamond armor. So I chopped some more trees so that I could trade some more sticks for some more emeralds, and then crafted myself a couple of blast furnaces, the workstation I needed for an armorer villager. For some reason, one of them didn't feel like working today, but luckily for me, the other one was more down to trade. So I spent the entire rest of the day leveling up the armorer's trades. Honestly, not really that interesting, just a bunch of stuff you've already seen before, I'm sure you get the point. But by the end of the day, I was covered in diamonds, and my bed got stolen by this guy. I spent day 42 trying to unlock a diamond sword from a weaponsmith, the last bit of diamond gear I needed to complete my full set, and also my first goal for the video. For some reason, I could only unlock an axe though. A bit confused, I bought it anyway, and crafted an anvil so I could combine it with my other axe, just slightly increasing my level of gear. I then put the axe to good use by clearing out a whole bunch of trees that were taking up space around the base, just in case I needed that space to expand the base. And I was going to expand the base later, because on day 43, I spent pretty much the entire day underground digging around to find some more stone. I was, of course, as you know, going to need a ton to feed into the world forge, as well as lots of building. After I got bored though, I made my way even further underground to loot level, where I got myself a world core, as well as a regular trunk spawner. I fed a load of stone into the world forge, and then wanted to craft the world forge into a spawner, not realizing I'd somehow run out of copper. I swore I had more than this. So, with no other choice, it was a trip back underground, where I ended up finding some pretty big copper veins in the lush cave area. I went back home and put the copper I just spent half the day getting into the furnace, where I realized I did in fact have copper already. Just hadn't taken it out of the furnace yet. So much for being organized. Now, the spawner I crafted this time was something different, and that was a badlands spawner. I thought this was a good idea, as it was a guaranteed chunk that was going to give us blocks we didn't have yet. So I spawned in the regular chunk spawner at the base, and then made my way over to the Sea of Spruce to spawn in the badlands. And as you would expect, it spawned in a badlands. I spent the day collecting as many blocks as I could, getting loads of red sand and also some regular terracotta. Eventually my pickaxe broke, so I head back home to buy myself a new one. Oh yeah, I also got rid of the home invader and turned in for the night. On day 45, I took care of some basic base maintenance, so that I'd be ready to work on the next big project of the base, which was going to be a library building, something that's going to hopefully take my gear to the next level, as there are a few enchantments that I'd really like to get. I wanted to keep this building a pretty similar style and scale to the storage one, so I built the base using the same blocks as before. Once that was done, I gave it a spruce slab trim, outlined the lower roof trims, and made a start on the second floor spruce pillars. And just after one day, the library was really starting to take shape. I spent the rest of the day crafting up some blocks that I was going to need for the building tomorrow. On day 46, of course, I carried on with the library building, starting with finishing off the second floor. I built it in the same style as before, but this time I wanted to use oak wood between the pillars instead, just to set it apart from the storage building. I filled in the lower roofs with deep slate, and then built up the trim of the main roof with spruce wood. Once that was done though, it was just a matter of filling in all the gaps with deep slate, adding some windows to the bottom floor, and making a start on the interior of the library. On day 47, I filled in the bits under the roof that I always forget about, and then got to work on building a tower at the side of the library. Now, this thing wasn't really going to serve much of an actual purpose, but what it is going to do is set the building apart a little bit. At this point, the library's shape was looking a little bit too similar to the storage building, and I was hoping that adding this tower was going to make the difference I wanted it to. Once this thing was finished, I think it achieved what I was hoping for. Not wanting to waste any more time on the exterior for now, I got to work on the interior, throwing down a floor and also a simple ceiling design. Once that was all finished, I got to work on making some spaces for librarians to live, which later on would prove to be a bit of a problem. Now, if I was ever going to get librarians, I was going to need lecterns, and to craft lecterns, I was going to need leather, something which I did have the means to get, but not really in an efficient way. Main reason being, I had all my animals penned up in this little area. I did manage to get enough leather to craft one lectern though, so I figured it best to get the ball rolling, or should I say the trades rolling. Well, at least I tried, because all this guy wanted to do was jump around and not do any work. After moving in another villager and waiting around, I did manage to get myself a looting 3 trade, something that would make getting leather a whole lot more efficient. I traded for a sharpness 1 diamond sword I didn't know I had the option of getting. Somehow I missed that, but I used that sword and the looting book to craft myself a decent cow slaying weapon. But if I ever hope to get a decent amount of leather for books, I was going to need to take care of a couple of things. Firstly, making a dedicated wheat field so that I have plenty of resources to breed the cows. I placed it between the library and the trading hall, seeing as there was a little bit of an awkward space that needed filling. Adding little patches of farm around the place are going to make a real big difference by the time we get to day 100. I spent the rest of the day though farming a little bit more wood, ready to move on to tomorrow's task, which was tear down the remaining villager buildings, take care of some terraforming, and make a more permanent spot for our lovely cows to live. I just used some spruce logs and some oak fences to make a somewhat aesthetic aesthetically pleasing cow pen, got them moved in, and then spent the rest of the day moving more villagers into the library building, which brings us to day 50. Yep, I forgot to record day 50, but here's me showing off what I got up to. I made a staircase to the second floor of the library, and also a bunch more spots for librarians to get to work. I bred up some cows, traded for some more emeralds. Honestly, you didn't miss much. Anyway, back to recording. On day 51, I took care of some basic chores like farming wheat and breeding cows. Also, I could craft myself another 2 lecterns. I got some more emeralds ready to buy all the enchanted books I could possibly want. But this is where quite a lot of villager frustration starts to kick in. For some reason I didn't yet realize, villagers were not taking jobs, making it impossible for me to roll book trades. I spent the entire day trying all sorts of different things to no avail. Now, I'm not really that experienced with villager trading, so this was a little bit of a struggle for me, and I'm sure you're all commenting what an idiot I am. But don't worry, I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually, right? After that though, I wanted to take a little break from villagers and just crack on with something else. So I went underground to mine a load of stone so I could feed the world forge. I crafted myself a chunk spawner and expanded the base area a tiny bit more. I did get another one of those cute farms where I used that wheat to breed the cows. So I guess that's something. Anyway, after that, I filled in the rest of my wheat farm, continued to get frustrated with villagers. Honestly, I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. And then I thought it best to just carry on with some more building, where next up was going to be transforming the villager breeder into something a little bit better looking. I started by texturing up what cobblestone was already there with some andesite and some gravel, hoping to use this as a base for the building. I ended the day by using some spruce slabs to add a trim to the first floor and also a trim for some lower roofs. The next day though, I somehow managed to unlock a feather falling trade, which I slapped on my boots right away. Such a nice enchantment to have while building, which is exactly what I did for day 53, carrying on with the villager breeder build. Building up the second floor walls took a little longer than expected, as I needed to smelt some sand for some more glass, as well as spend most of the day farming wood. You know what, let's just hop over to tomorrow, where I finished off the walls with my glass and oak wood, and made a lower pitch roof with some spruce slabs and deep slate. I finished off adding some windows to the bottom floor, so that I could check to see if they were still getting on nicely. Still more detail to add to this thing, but I wanted to crack on with something else, and that was sorting out this big patch of water and ice that I had in the main base area. I wanted to get it all nice and flat with dirt, so eventually grass could grow over it, and I could turn it into something a little bit more useful. This actually took quite a long time, and also all the dirt that I had, but it still wasn't quite enough to get the whole job done. I ended the day by making sure that the area was lit up, so all my villagers would be safe. After that, I spent more time in the library, contemplating whether to take the torches away again. Oh, I hate you villagers. On day 55, still frustrated with villagers, I just wanted to relax a little bit. And what better way to relax than... Why are there so many zombies? What's happening? Okay, well, maybe not that. What better way to relax than just do some mindless mining? Honestly, in this challenge, mining blocks seems to be quite a big part of it. Some people may not like it, but for me, I'm really enjoying it. But after that, I had enough resources for the world forge and was able to craft myself another regular chunk spawner. I was going to need quite a bit more space for what I had planned later on in this video. So on the morning of day 56, I spawned in a brand new chunk to once again expand the base area. But after spending a little bit of time clearing out my new piece of land, I constructed something that I'd like to call the Villager Destroyer 4000. And how you use it is like this. See you, buddy. That's right, these villagers have been annoying me so much that honestly, this is just the best use for these bozos. Well, except this guy that gave me mending. Now, over the course of the next few days, I was going to dedicate myself to getting this villager trading thing figured out. And honestly, I really hate to do this kind of thing in a 100 days video, but I'm going to have to mash together a few days here because all I did for 3 whole days is just try and get villagers to take jobs, get frustrated, and do some basic chores around the base. You know, all the stuff you've already seen 10 times, like farm wood, wheat, and emeralds. Like I said, I really don't like mashing days together so quickly, but honestly, this was just so frustrating because there's 2 enchantments I really wanted to get. Fortune 3 and Efficiency 5. These 2 enchantments on a pickaxe would make mining resources for crafting chunk spawners a whole lot quicker. I mean, considering all the time that I'm wasting messing around with villagers, maybe this is a net lost profit of time. Either way, by the time I got to day 58, I was still no closer to my goal. On day 59, I didn't want to give up, but I did want to take a little break. And I got a break by building a more permanent sugarcane farm right next to the villager breeder building. I kept it simple by making a perimeter out of spruce fences and then just filled in the area with sugarcane. Once that was finished, it was time to get back to figuring out villagers. I was trying all sorts of things to get them to work, like getting rid of all the workstations around the base, thinking that might have something to do with my problem, which, as I'm sure you all know, it didn't. After watching these morons have a little dance, this other moron decided he was ready to work. Even now, I still have no idea why. After rolling a couple of trades, he came up with Unbreaking 2, which I was pretty down to have, so I crafted a book and snapped up the deal. I ended the day by putting Mending and Unbreaking on my pickaxe. Finally, a bit of progress. But day 60 was a day of even more progress. After chopping some wood and getting some more emeralds, I figured out that if I trap myself in with a villager, it feels it has no other choice but to take a job. I'm not too sure why it works this way, and I've never heard of this method working before, but in the end, who even cares? It was actually working. So I spent the entire day finally being able to roll trades, just waiting for a fortune or efficiency. Unfortunately though, after all my rolling, the best enchantment I managed to get was efficiency 1, which quite frankly was not good enough at all. I continued to roll trades through day 61, where after long last, I discovered a fortune 3 trade. There was no way I was going to pass that one up. After that, I made a new cell for rolling trades just outside the villager breeder. I figured I can roll trades here and then just move the good villagers into the library building. This was another full day of trade rolling though, not exactly the most thrilling content, but as the day and my patience was coming to an end, I got a pretty cheap efficiency 4 trade. Super happy with that. I wanted to start a fresh day that didn't involve any villagers at all. And what better way to treat the things I find most annoying than build them their very own houses. To do that though, I had to take care of quite a lot of maintenance, seeing as I've made a little bit of a mess around the base trying to get these villagers to work. It mainly involved putting back villagers that I'd been moving around and trading for XP so I could put fortune on my pickaxe. One thing I did realise on day 62 though, while I was trying to repair my pick, is that Jerry was no longer working as he once was. Probably because where I put the sea of spruce, that thing was now taking up all the mob spawns in the area. Sorry, Jerry. Anyway, another thing that I was going to need to do to make some villager houses is expand the base as much as I can. So I head down underground with my new OP pick to spend the day mining out a bunch more stone to feed the world forge. Having efficiency 5 made a massive difference, and I was getting a lot of raw materials fast. Once my inventory was almost full, I went down to loot level to collect the new chests, where I found a world core, 4 world crystals, and an unstable chunk. I made my way back to the base so I could spend the night feeding the world forge, ready for a big base expansion tomorrow. The next day, the world forge had made 2 more world cores, so now I had a total of 4 that I could craft into 4 regular chunk spawners. After clearing out some mobs, I spawned in all 4 of the new chunks, quickly expanding the main base area. This was going to give me so much more room to build. After that though, I made my way over to the sea of spruce to take a shot at getting something interesting from the unstable chunk. Of course that thing spawned in yet another ocean. I mean honestly, what else did I expect? Anyway, I spent the rest of that day working away at getting a better shovel, doing some villager trading to get what I wanted. Eventually I got efficiency 4 and Unbreaking 3, and started to tear up one of the chunks next to Jerry, as tomorrow I was going to need a whole load of dirt. And that was because I wanted to get rid of all the water and ice in the new chunks, so that they'd be more suitable for building. I mean, ice isn't exactly the most stable foundation for a house, is it? I know I think the villagers are annoying, but I still needed to treat them right. Once that was done though, I cleared out all of the trees in the new area, where I discovered I had some new friends. Oh, look at that, foxes. As the day was drawing to a close, I wanted to get the floor plans in for some new buildings. I managed to squeeze in 3 for now, and also plot out a spot for a fishing pond. Fishing's like my favourite thing to do in the whole game, and I haven't done any of that yet. Here's hoping I actually have time to do some. At this point though, I was almost ready to start building, except for the fact that I had to spend today collecting some more resources. Mainly a load of wood, and also some tough and deep slate. Not all that exciting, I know, but how do you expect me to build with no blocks? With new blocks in hand, it was time to get cracking on with the 3 new buildings of the base. These were all going to have a use eventually, but over the next few days, I was going to build up the exterior shells before giving them a functional interior. On day 67, I made some big progress by building up the foundations out of cobblestone and tuff. After that, I gave them a trim of spruce slabs to match the other buildings that are already in the base. Once I completed that, nighttime was quickly approaching, so I got a small start on the second floor by placing in a few spruce beams. On day 68, I of course carried on with the new villager buildings by building up the rest of the spruce pillars on each of the houses. Once that was done, I got to work on finishing off all the second floors, using different blocks for each house. Finally, I got around to using the terracotta and red sandstone I collected a few days back, as well as some spruce and oak wood. I spent the next day building up all the roofs on the building. I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise, but I built them out of spruce wood and deep slate, so they would match the rest of the base. Not really much else to say though, just building roofs. Anyway, on day 70, I spent the morning finishing off the last roof, and then got to work on building up another tower, just like I did on the library building. I love adding these to builds from time to time, because it really gives some nice variation in height when constructing a village. After that, I got to work on lighting up the interiors of the houses to prevent mobs from spawning, because as we all know, none of us want creepers blowing up. After cleaning up the creeper mess, I moved this lonely librarian to move in with his mates, and then spent the rest of the day plotting out some paths around the village. Still a lot of work to do in this new area, but tomorrow I had another task that I needed to fulfill, and that was kind of boring, but once again digging up a whole load more blocks to feed the world forge. There was still quite a decent amount of expansion I wanted to do, so I had to make sure that I stayed on top of crafting more chunk spawners. But all that raw material ended up being enough to make 2 more world cores. Not bad for one day's mining, honestly. The next day I took those world cores and crafted them into 2 more chunks. I fought off a creeper army and once again expanded the base just a little bit more. I spent some time clearing out the new chunks so that it'd be nice and prepped for future building. But before I can make new buildings, I need to give the ones I already have a purpose. Starting with the orange house, which I wanted to be a blacksmith type thing. Basically a house that contained a furnace array. I didn't do anything too powerful though, just some furnaces sitting on top of some hoppers. Seeing as there wasn't a lot of time left in this world, I didn't really need anything more than this. Anyway, I placed it in the ceiling, threw down a few chests for some decoration, and went to bed. On day 73, I wanted to make a simple chimney, just to sit in front of the new blacksmith building. I thought it'd look pretty nice being made out of deep slate, and you know what? I think it was actually a good call. I just needed to craft some campfires, chuck them in at the top of the chimney, make a bit more of a permanent door design, and that was the blacksmith done for now. With not much time left, I was super keen to crack on with the next building, which I wanted to be dedicated to like sheep, or I guess a clothes maker or something. Honestly, I'm not really sure. It was at this point that I was low-key panicking about how much time I had left, as I really wanted to complete my goal of building up an awesome village. But yeah, eventually I moved the sheep into the new pen and spent the rest of the day tidying up the interior. I spent the morning of day 74 harvesting all of my wheat so that I would have enough to breed my sheep, as I was going to need quite a lot of wood if I was going to decorate the interior. After placing some leaves on the outside of the building, I chopped down some giant spruce trees so I could make a whole load of charcoal using the new furnace array. Oh yeah, this is me trying to get red dye so I could have red wool, completely forgetting that there's probably like 1,000 red poppies in the iron farm. Yep, kinda dumb. But after being an idiot, I spent the rest of that day expanding the wheat field to fill in this awkward bit of space in the village. But with the wheat field done, I kinda neglected the fact that I got rid of my potato field a few days back, so I thought it best to build one again between the villager breeder and the new sheep house thingy. After that though, I cracked on with this little corner area, which was of course going to be our fishing pond. Honestly, this thing came out kinda bad. Like I said, at this point I was really panicking about time, so I just made a super simple dock, and then probably the most plain building I think I've ever made in a video, just using spruce and oak wood. I threw down some chests and some leaves for the interior, and just called it a day. Hopefully I got time to come back and improve this mess later. Leaving the fishing pond behind though, the next day I sheared my sheep and made a simple awning outside the house, using some red and white wool. Still not sure what to do with that interior though. I moved on to the last empty building, which I wanted to act as a butcher's. I spent the morning tidying up the interior and making 3 spots for 3 butcher villagers to live. For some reason I thought that the butcher's workstation was a cauldron. I realized my mistake and made their actual workstation, which is of course a smoker. I moved the 3 villagers that I needed into their new building and threw down some chests for storage. After that I sheared some red sheep so I could put down some carpet, definitely not meant to be anything else. But anyway, I spent the rest of the day adding a little bit of decoration to the front of the building, ready to move on to the next day, where I spent the vast majority of the day leveling up the butchers and unlocking a cooked pork trade, one of the best foods in the game. Once that was done though, I really needed to repair my pickaxe, as tomorrow I plan on doing one more big push to expand our base area. I traded sticks for XP and spent the rest of the day at a very poorly working jerry until my pickaxe was almost repaired. With my pickaxe ready to go, I head back down to the mines and just dug for 2 days, trying to gather up as much raw material as I could. That way I could chuck it all in the world forge and craft some more chunk spawners. Honestly, not too much else to say about this. Kinda boring, so let's just move on. While waiting for the world forge to craft up the world core, I got a whole ton of copper smelting up at the furnace array, just before chopping some trees to use as fuel. I also found a wandering trader who was selling a new wood type. Not my favorite, but I thought it'd be well worth grabbing and farming anyway. Still waiting for copper to smelt, I thought it'd be a good idea to repair my almost broken axe, so I bought one from a villager, disenchanted it, and sorted it out at the anvil. After chopping a little bit more wood for some building later, it was finally time to craft up 4 chunk spawners. I spawned the first one in, so excited to spawn in the other 3, when I misplaced 2 of the spawners, not realizing that when I broke them, this happened. No! What? That's right, I actually wasted 2 entire spawners, as well as a load of time that I didn't have crafting them. Anyway, after that disaster, I spawned in my 1 remaining chunk and spent the rest of the day cleaning it up. What a disaster of a day. Swiftly moving on to day 81, where I went back down to loot level to collect all the chests that I'd been neglecting. I did get a whole load of useful stuff though, which kind of makes yesterday not seem as bad. Who am I kidding? Yesterday was still pretty bad. On the morning of day 82, I was able to craft up a total of 7 chunk spawners. 7! Let's have some fun watching me spawn all these in. Of course, after that though, I had to spend some time clearing them all out to make way for some more buildings. Not much time left, but lots of building still to be done. I made some floor plans for 2 more bigger buildings, as well as a plan to extend out our villager trading hall. This thing was not really going to be of much use once all the houses were done, but I still wanted this thing to look a lot better than it currently did. I spent the rest of the day plotting out a load more paths around the base, so I could figure out what spots are going to need decoration. I was determined to get these last buildings done, and also leave enough time to get some details in around the base as well. Now, I didn't think I'd have to do this again in this video, but unfortunately I did. I had to farm cobblestone, tuff, and deep slate. Not the most exciting of days, but a necessary one to complete the new buildings. Oh yeah, and how can I forget? I found my first diamonds. The next day, I threw those things into the void, as well as this creeper, and this iron golem who somehow made its way out of the farm. After that though, I cracked on with the first new building, which I wanted to be a sawmill type thing. Basically the best sort of building that I could think of to house Fletchers. They were the lifeblood of my half-decent gear, so I wanted to treat them right and get them out of that rubbish trading hall. With the stone base complete though, I added the usual spruce trim, as well as some strip spruce pillars for the second floor. I spent the rest of the day gathering up some sand to turn into glass. I had some, but definitely not enough to finish off this mega village project. On day 85 though, I made some major progress to the sawmill building, finishing off the second floor with spruce stairs and glass, building up the roof with spruce planks and cobbled deep slate, and also tidying up the interior with a floor and some first story windows. The next day, I continued to work on the interior, building an actual doorway and some spots for the Fletchers to live. I decided I'd use some acacia seeing as I had it, and then made a ceiling using some strip spruce and slabs. Once that was done though, it was time for me to move the villagers in, so they'd be ready for some trading later on. To make this place look a little bit more like a sawmill type thing, I of course needed to plant a whole bunch of trees around the place, as well as add a wood pile in the covered storage area. I also made a small log storage platform at the front, just for some extra detail. But with that done, this little project was really starting to take shape. Feeling a little impatient on day 87, I grabbed some bone meal to grow up the trees I planted yesterday, when I discovered some terraforming I still had to do. Not wanting to waste any time, I spent the morning reshaping the terrain, and also growing some extra oak trees to help embed the sawmill into the base. I also ended up bone mealing the ground around the trees, and that made a real difference to how the base was looking. I spent the rest of that day harvesting my big wheat field, as tomorrow I plan to expand it even more. And well, yeah, here's me doing just that. Not much to say really. Anyway, I also added another field outside the front of the sawmill, but this time I filled it with some poppies that were accumulating over at the iron farm. Definitely adds a nice pop of colour. Next up though, it was time to start working on the next building, which I wanted to be a house for some stonemasons. I figured it'd be a cool way of getting some blocks that I didn't have yet, and then use them to build up this house. I spent the rest of the day building up the first floor, and made a start on the spruce trim. I spent the next morning getting all the sprucey bits in for the second floor, leaving some gaps for whatever blocks I was about to get. I tidied up the floor a little bit, and made some spots for stonemasons to trade. To get them to take a job though, I had to craft up some stone cutters, and move over 4 brand new villagers. Thankfully this time I didn't have any trouble with them not taking jobs. I spent the rest of the day chopping giant spruce trees, so I could trade for some more emeralds. I figured I was going to need quite a lot tomorrow to level up the stonemasons. I spent the entire next morning leveling up these morons, getting a whole load of clay and chiseled stone. Honestly, I'm skipping over this, because other than what I mentioned, I didn't really get anything else that I wanted to use, so I ended up filling in the second floor with bricks and glass, which actually ended up looking pretty good. I spent the rest of the day building up the roof out of spruce and deep slate just like I usually do, and called it a day. The morning of day 91 was spent finishing off the super simple interior. There really is so much more I could do with all these interiors, but with time at a premium, I was prioritizing throwing up extra buildings. I mean, any long-term viewers of this channel are going to know I'm not really known for completing interiors anyway. But once that was done, I threw down some extra bone meal and took a step back to realize realized this building was missing something, and that something was a chimney. So I built one just like I did over at the furnace array building, and I gotta say, I'm so glad I did, because it made this building look just that little bit better. The next day, I wanted to take care of generating an extra chunk that was missing right next to the rubbish fishing area. So I went down to loot level and grabbed myself a world core, which I then of course crafted into an extra chunk spawner. I spawned that thing in and... oh, more village. I spent the rest of that day tearing down these new unwanted villager buildings, and while I was at it, I also tore down the fishing hut because this mess was really not fitting in with the rest of the base. Not wanting to leave this area in the mess that it is, I figured I may as well make the most of it and have another go at making a proper fishing area. So I expanded the pond a little bit more and spent ages tearing out all the ice and replacing it with some dirt, thinking this might be a nice spot for some extra fields later on. After that, I began construction of the new fishing area by building a more organically shaped dock. I then made a more interesting shape for the house's floor plan out of stone and started to build up the walls out of oak logs and spruce planks. Next up was the roof, which took me so much longer than it usually does. For some reason, I was having a hard time trying to get the different height roofs to connect to each other. All the while, it was snowing, making a big mess of the area that I wanted to plant some fields. Anyway, after way too long, the roof was finally complete, and I spent the rest of the day tidying up the interior and adding a few decorations like some leaves and some barrels for future villagers to take the fisherman job. With the new fishing area all but complete, I used some iron shovels to clear up the mess yesterday's snowstorm had created. But now that I had the space to make some more fields, well, I made some more fields. This took the entire rest of the day, but I was sure once this was all grown, it was going to look so good. Now only 5 days to go, and still quite a lot left to do, starting with upgrading the villager trading building. I started by building up some walls, and took a step back to realize that extending the building in the way that I planned, well, that was going to block the view of the stonemason house. So I ended up tearing down what I just built, and instead made a sort of garden wall archway type thing. I gave it a little roof made out of spruce wood when I thought of a good use for that area. I figured it'd be a nice little sanctuary for my wolves to live. They've been sat around waiting for a home for like 90 days or something, so I think they deserve it. I ended the day by sorting out the terrain next to the trading building and also fixing up the path. On day 97, I wanted to tidy up the area on the backside of the storage house. I've mainly been using it to farm trees up to this point, which doesn't really look that great, but do you know what does look great? A little pond. So that's exactly what I built. I gave it a little bone meal, chucked some rocks at the bottom, and also threw down some coarse dirt around the edge. I also planted an extra potato field in the area. Not something I needed, but it does look good once it's all grown. I planted a few oak trees for some decoration, and moved on to my spruce tree growing area, where I tore them down, extended the path, and grew some azalea trees. I spent the morning of day 98 tearing out all the ice and podzol, and then replacing it with dirt so it would fit in with the rest of the base. Once that was done, I ended up planting a ton of oak trees to frame the area a bit, and then moved on to trying to upgrade my lighting situation. Torches weren't really doing it for me, so I wanted to upgrade them to lanterns. I set the furnace array up to make a whole load of charcoal, and did some extra bone mealing around the base while I waited. Once I had enough charcoal, I crafted some lanterns and fences, and spent the rest of the day placing them all down. Now, day 99 was a special day. The day I freed all the villagers and actually populated my base. I started with releasing the trading hall villagers, and then let all the villagers that had been trapped in the breeder start living their lives. Even though I wasn't going to be here much longer, these villagers were going to be here for eternity. So you know what? I'm glad I've managed to make them something half decent. I spent the rest of the day placing in some more lanterns and getting some last minute decoration in, because tomorrow I planned on doing something that I've been waiting 99 days to do, and that is of course spend my final day in this world fishing. Finally, fishy business. And while I fish, let's take a little look at what I've managed to achieve in this 100 days. Starting off with just one chunk, I've been able to complete all my goals and kind of exceed my expectations a little. Granted, there are some things I didn't manage to do. Interiors. But overall, I gotta say I'm so happy with the end result. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If you made it this far, leave a comment saying, "Love you, Jerry," so I know you made it to the end. But yeah, consider leaving a like if you want to see more videos like this, and make sure to subscribe if you're cool. Or not cool, I really don't mind. Anyway, okay, bye!